imagine a crowded school cafeteria, a place full of noise, laughter, and whispers. Now picture a quiet girl, eating alone, unnoticed by most until a bully decides to humiliate her in front of everyone. He lifts his tray, ready to spill food on her, his friends laughing, the crowd waiting. But what happens next shocks the entire room, because this quiet girl is not what she seems. Her reaction flips the power, leaving the bully broken and every student stunned. Do you want to know how one moment of silence turned into unforgettable strength? Stay with me, because this story will change the way you see quiet people forever. The cafeteria was loud with chatter, clinking trays, and the faint smell of fries and grease. Students laughed in groups, their voices bouncing off the tiled walls. At a corner table, a quiet girl sat alone, her head lowered, carefully eating her food. Her movements were calm, almost delicate, as if she wanted no one to notice her. Across the room, a boy with a loud voice and a cruel smirk locked eyes on her. He was the kind of bully who fed on silence. He picked up his tray, his friends following behind, their laughter sharp like knives. Step by step, he moved toward her, the sound of his sneakers squeaking against the floor. The quiet girl lifted her gaze for just a second. Her eyes were steady, almost unreadable, and then she looked back at her plate. The bully grinned wider. He tilted his tray, letting a stream of orange juice slide dangerously close to the edge. His friends whispered, eager for the spill, eager for her humiliation. The girl heard the trickle of liquid shift, smelled the sweet temps of the juice mixing with the greasy air. Her hand tightened around her fork, her knuckles pale against the metal. The tray tipped further. A hush spread over the tables nearby, the laughter fading into expectant silence. The first drop fell, splashing against the table. The girl froze for a heartbeat, her breath steady, her jaw locked. And then her chair scraped back, loud and sudden, cutting through the quiet like a blade. You said. The sound of her chair against the floor made everyone flinch. The bully's grin faltered, his tray still tilted in midair. The girl stood slowly, her shoulders squared. Her eyes locked on him. There was no fear in her stare, only a sharp stillness that unsettled the room. The cafeteria seemed to shrink, every eye fixed on the unfolding scene. The drip of juice hitting the floor echoed louder than the laughter from before. The bully's friends shifted uneasily, their smiles breaking. The girl's hand loosened from the fork and fell to her side. Her posture was calm, but her presence filled the air with tension. She stepped forward, the space between them closing with quiet precision. The bully tried to laugh, a nervous sound that cracked in his throat. Her gaze never wavered. She moved like someone who had done this before, someone who was not new to confrontation. Her voice was low, steady, and it sliced through the silence. Try it. The single word dropped heavy. Pressing against every chest in the room, the bully's tray shook in his hands, the juice trembling at the edge. Whispers rippled through the crowd, a mixture of shock and disbelief. The girl's eyes narrowed, her stance shifting slightly. Balanced and ready. The air smelled of metal now, sharp and electric, as if the room itself braced for impact. The bully hesitated, his confidence cracking with every second she stood there. His hand twitched, the tray rattling as the juice sloshed dangerously close to spilling. The girl tilted her head. A faint movement, but her eyes burned with a warning no one could mistake. The cafeteria was silent, the weight of tension pressing down on every table, every student. The bully's throat bobbed as he swallowed, his bravado slipping like sand through his fingers. Still, pride pushed him forward, forcing a shaky laugh from his lips. He tipped the tray, just enough for the juice to slide again. In an instant, the girl's hand shot forward. Faster than anyone could follow, she struck the edge of the tray with a sharp twist of her wrist. The entire tray flipped, food and drink flying through the air in a messy arc. Gasps erupted as the bully staggered back. Splattered with his own meal, orange juice streamed down his shirt. Dripping onto the floor, the girl did not move back. She stepped into his space, close enough that he stumbled again. Her voice cut the air. calm and precise. "Do not try that with me again." The words struck harder than the act itself. Echoing in the stunned silence, the bully's friends froze. Their smirks wiped clean, eyes wide with disbelief. The girl's shoulders relaxed, but her stance remained firm. Grounded like stone, the smell of spilled food filled the cafeteria, heavy and sour. As the crowd held its breath, no one laughed now. Asterisk, the bully's face burned red, half from anger, half from humiliation. He wiped at his shirt, smearing juice and sauce across the fabric. His hands shaking, his friends stepped back. No longer eager to stand beside him, the quiet girl did not flinch. Her steady gaze holding him in place like chains. Every sound in the cafeteria seemed distant, the hum of the lights, the buzz of whispers, the dripping juice pattering against the floor. The boy clenched his fists, his chest heaving with shallow breaths. But when he met her eyes again, something inside him faltered. It was not just the strength in her stance. It was the certainty, the kind of certainty that belonged to someone who had fought before. And one the crowd leaned in, restless with anticipation. Unsure if the boy would push further or retreat. His jaw tightened, his pride a battle against the unease rising in his chest. The girl did not move, but the stillness of her body carried more threat than a raised fist. A silence deeper than before settled over the room, thick with the weight of a choice about to be made. Asterisk, the bully's breath grew louder, each inhale ragged, each exhale heavy with frustration. A bead of sweat slid down his temple. Mixing with the sticky juice on his skin, he shifted his stance, his sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. The crowd waited, eyes locked on him, their silence sharper than any shout. For the first time, he looked smaller, his shoulders curling inward, as if the room itself pressed down on him. The girl's eyes stayed fixed, unblinking, steady as stone. Her presence was not loud, not dramatic, but it carried a force that bent the space around her. The bully's fingers loosened at last, his fists unclenching as his arms hung stiff at his sides. A murmur rippled through the cafeteria, the crowd sensing the moment's shift. Still, no one dared to speak too loudly. Afraid of breaking the fragile edge of tension, the boy's lips parted as if words might come. But nothing left his mouth. Only the sound of his uneven breathing filled the gap between them. The girl took one small step closer, slow and deliberate. Her shadow stretched across him under the harsh cafeteria lights. He flinched, ever so slightly, his body betraying the fear he tried to bury. Asterisk, the girl's step echoed like a hammer striking stone. Sealing the moment, the bully's bravado cracked, his eyes darting to the floor as though searching for escape. Around them, students leaned forward in their seats, their bodies tense, breaths caught in their throats. The cafeteria, once alive with chatter, now felt like a stage balanced on silence. The smell of spilled food lingered, sour and heavy, a reminder of his failed attempt. The girl's gaze did not soften. Sharp and unwavering, pinning him where he stood, he shifted his weight backward, his heels scraping against the tile in retreat. Whispers surged like wind through the crowd. Astonishment, disbelief, admiration. The boy's face flushed deeper, shame crawling across his skin like fire. His friends avoided his eyes, their smirks erased, their confidence broken. The girl did not chase, did not boast, did not need to. Her stillness spoke louder than any act of violence. Every heartbeat in the room seemed to slow. Waiting, measuring what would happen next, the bully swallowed hard, his throat tight, his pride fighting against the truth pressing down on him. He was no longer in control. Asterisk, the boy's chest rose and fell, each breath shallow, unsteady. His fingers twitched at his sides, desperate to hide the tremor that betrayed him. The quiet girl stood tall, her expression unreadable, her silence heavier than any insult. The weight of her presence pressed harder with every passing second. Until he could no longer meet her eyes, he turned his face away, the line of his jaw tight with swallowed anger. The crowd felt the shift, the power tipping like a scale between them. Some students gasped quietly, others covered their mouths. Stunned at the sight of the bully folding, the girl took in the room without moving her head. Sensing every pair of eyes on her, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above. Casting her shadow long and sharp across the floor, the boy shuffled one step back, his sneakers leaving streaks on the tile. Each retreat pulled a murmur from the students, disbelief turning into a wave of hushed awe. The girl did not advance further. She simply held her ground, unshaken, her breathing steady against the tremor of the boy's collapse. His pride cracked, and everyone could hear it in the silence he left behind. The silence wrapped tighter, as though the entire cafeteria held its breath. The bully's eyes flickered to the tables around him, searching for support. But none of his friends stepped forward. Their faces were pale, their bodies still. Unwilling to be dragged into his downfall, the weight of betrayal added to the heat in his chest. Burning hotter than the juice that stained his shirt, he clenched his jaw. Forcing his lips into a crooked smirk that fooled no one, the quiet girl watched him, her gaze steady, her stance firm, unmoved by his mask of defiance. Every second stretched longer. The sound of distant footsteps in the hallway seeping faintly. Through the cafeteria doors, the boy's breathing hitched, his shoulders sagging under the invisible weight pressing him down. He tried to straighten, tried to summon the strength that had once made him feared. But the room was different now. The balance of power had shifted, and he stood exposed in the harsh glow of fluorescent light. The girl's stillness was a mirror, reflecting back every weakness he tried to hide. A nervous laugh bubbled from his throat, jagged and hollow, shattering into the silence. The sound only deepened the unease, making the crowd lean closer, waiting for his next move. The laugh died quickly, hanging in the air like smoke that refused to fade. No one joined him. Dozens of eyes bore into his back, stripping away the last pieces of his confidence. The girl tilted her head slightly, her expression calm, but her silence carried the sharpness of a blade. The boy's smirk wavered, his lips twitching before flattening into a tight line. He shifted his trayless hands against his jeans, wiping at the sticky mess as if he could erase the moment. The whispers around the room swelled, no longer hidden, their tones carrying judgment and awe. He heard them every word, every breath like needles piercing through his pride. The girl did not need to speak again. Her presence alone cut deeper than any insult could. The boy's shoulders slumped, the fight draining from him like water spilling from a cracked glass. The cafeteria felt colder now, the hum of the lights sharper. Every sound amplified in the silence that wrapped around her victory. Students exchanged glances, their eyes wide, their mouths parting in disbelief. The bully had never looked so small, and the quiet girl had never looked so unshakable. The boy's feet shifted again, one sliding backward, the other struggling to hold its ground. It was not retreat, not fully. But the hesitation betrayed him. The girl stood as if rooted to the floor, her frame steady, her breathing even. The difference between them was Starquan unraveling, the other unbreakable. A chair creaked somewhere in the back, the sound sharp in the silence. Dozens of eyes darted toward the noise, then back to the two figures locked in their silent standoff. The bully's hands curled into fists again, but the motion lacked strength. His knuckles were pale, yet his arms trembled. Refusing to obey the image he tried to project, the quiet girl's gaze never left him. She did not blink, did not falter, her calm more terrifying than any raised voice. The boy's breath caught, his chest tightening, the pressure of the moment crushing down on him. Every whisper in the cafeteria felt louder, every stare heavier, until his skin prickled with heat. The quiet girl shifted her weight, the smallest movement, but it rolled through the room like a warning. The bully flinched, the reaction raw and unguarded, pulling gasps from the crowd. The gasp spread like a ripple across the cafeteria, every student frozen in disbelief. The bully's flinch had shattered the illusion of control he had clung to. His face flushed deeper, a violent mix of shame and anger twisting across his features. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words formed, only a dry, broken breath. The girl did not move closer, yet her presence pressed heavier, suffocating the space between them. Her eyes held him, sharp and unyielding, until he could no longer bear to meet them. He dropped his gaze to the floor, his shoulders sagging under the weight of defeat. The crowd erupted in whispers, some sharp with shock, others laced with admiration. The sound filled the cafeteria, buzzing like electricity, but none of it reached the girl. She stood untouched by the noise, her calm wrapping around her like armor. The bully's hands hung limp at his sides now, the trembling no longer hidden. His chest rose and fell with uneven rhythm, each breath a struggle against humiliation. The sticky stains on his shirt clung to him, bright evidence of his failed cruelty, and still the girl did not speak. Her silence was louder than any words he could have feared. "You said." The silence pressed into him until his own skin felt too tight. The weight of dozens of stares burned hotter than the fluorescent lights above. He shifted his feet again. But this time the motion was not defiance. It was escape. The boy turned slightly, his shoulder angling toward the doors at the far end of the cafeteria. The crowd noticed, a low murmur rising like a tide. Every step backward stripped another piece of his pride. His friends avoided his eyes, shrinking into the crowd as if they had never stood beside him. The girl remained still, her calm figure casting a shadow longer than his shame. Her silence followed him, trailing behind like a sentence he could never escape. The air was thick with disbelief, the smell of spilled food sour beneath the electric tension. When his heel touched the edge of the doorway, his chest hitched with a shallow breath. He had reached the threshold, but the weight of the room held him there, suspended between flight and collapse, and every eye in the cafeteria waited to see if he would run. The boy's hand twitched at his side, fingers curling as if clinging to the last thread of dignity. But his eyes betrayed him, darting once toward the girl and then quickly away. The crowd leaned forward, the scrape of a chair leg echoing as someone shifted for a better view. His throat worked hard, the sound of a swallow loud in the charged silence. He took one step through the doorway, his sneaker squeaking faintly on the tile. Another step followed, quicker this time, his body sagging under the weight of defeat. Whispers swelled behind him, a wave that pushed him further down the hall. The girl did not chase, did not move at all. She stood where she was, anchored and calm, her gaze still fixed on the space he had occupied. The cafeteria buzzed now, voices rising with awe, disbelief, and quiet laughter. Every eye flicked between the door and the girl, the memory of what they had witnessed burning fresh in their minds. The air felt lighter, though the smell of spilled food clung stubbornly to the room. The quiet girl finally lowered her eyes back to her tray. With steady hands, she sat down again, as if nothing had happened. She picked up her fork once more, the clatter of metal against the plate breaking the last of the silence around her. The cafeteria began to stir back to life, voices rising cautiously. Though every word circled back to her, students whispered her name with newfound respect, their eyes carrying a weight that had not been there before. The bully was gone, his absence louder than his cruelty had ever been. The girl, however, sat quietly. Unmoved by the storm she had just silenced, she did not smile. She did not boast. Her calm was her victory. One by one, heads turned back to their meals. Though glances kept slipping in her direction, it was clear the balance of power had shifted, and she had not needed to raise her voice to claim it. The cafeteria noise returned, but beneath it lingered an unspoken truth. Everyone knew the quiet girl was not to be underestimated, and in that moment, her silence became the strongest voice in the room.